Hey everyone, this is Dr. Fields. My voice has returned for the most part. I'm feeling better. Sorry for the delay in getting this video out to you guys. So this video is part of our 4-part series that is discussing the 4 very most essential aspects of an effective weight loss plan for people like us who struggle with food dependency issues and who struggle with losing weight and especially keeping it off. Okay. So this video is going to be discussing the 3rd pillar, so to speak, and that is motivation. Now, I've talked a bunch about motivation in the past in other videos, but in this video, I'm going to basically put in a whole bunch of different points that I've made in other videos so that this can be kind of like an overview of all the things you need to consider to really try to get motivated and stay motivated on your plan. And I've also added some new ones as well. And so the first point that I want to make to inspire you and motivate you, this is going to be a little bit of a, Tony Robbins kind of speech, is this is science. And I want you to keep that in mind. Weight loss is based on science. This is not some outrageous wish that you have or some far-fetched dream. This is based on science. If you stay in a caloric deficit, you will lose weight. It's as simple as that in terms of what you need to do. Doing it may not be so simple, but what you need to do is very simple. This is science, and I want you to repeat that to yourself whenever you're like, I don't think this is going to work. I don't think I'm made to lose weight. I don't think that I'm made to be thin or made to be of a certain body weight. This is science, and if you stick to this plan that you create that puts yourself in a deficit, you will lose weight. Now, of course, if you don't make a plan that causes a deficit, you will not lose weight. Some of you may have a medical condition that makes losing weight extremely difficult. But even for those of you who are in that situation, you can still lose weight, albeit at a slower rate. There are very few people that just physiologically cannot lose weight. So remember the mantra. Second thing I want you to tell yourself, this is the priority. My weight loss plan is the priority. It comes before everything. I need to make time for my exercise program. I need to make time for meal planning if I need to do that. This is the priority. This has got to be held in your mind in this important manner for you to really stick with it. You would never say, brushing teeth is not a priority. I just don't have time for it. Showering is not a priority. I don't have time for it. I'm busy. I have a job. I have a family. I have this. I have that. You make time for those things. You would never say sleep is not a priority. You make time for these things because it's necessary. This should be right up at the top of the list with everything else. And I dare say, if it has to be, at least temporarily, a priority even over loved ones, such as your spouse, then that is what it has to be. Of course, please have a candid discussion with your spouse and let them know what you're doing and that you really want their support, but it's got to be at that level. The only thing I think that should kind of share the spotlight in terms of being a super #1 priority is your kids. But there's room at the top. You can prioritize your kids and your weight loss plan. It can be done. It has to be a priority. It cannot be the first thing that you think about getting rid of when you get busy. You cannot say, hey, you know what? I don't need to exercise today. I have too many things to do. I don't need to do any kind of food planning or cook something healthy. I'll just grab something to eat. I don't have time. It cannot be this kind of expendable uh, duty or task that you have each day. It's got to be the priority, and everything has to work around it. The third thing, you have to develop a pros and cons list. And by the way, the motivation I'm talking about now is all the motivation to, you know, get psyched up and get started to do this plan. That's what I'm talking about right now. I'm actually going to break this up into the motivation before you actually start doing this and while you're doing this. So the other thing that you want to address to really psych yourself up and get excited about this is, I mentioned this before, developing a pros and cons list, a very honest pros and cons list with the pros, the positive reasons why you want to do this, and the cons, or the reasons essentially why this may be difficult for you to do. The other thing you want to do is tell other people that you're doing this. If you tell other people you're doing this, you'll be amazed how much that helps your commitment. And on that note, maybe enlisting somebody else to do this with you, could be a spouse, that would be great. Or if you don't have a buddy that wants to do this with you, you can enlist the help of a professional. Okay, now this is gonna be part one of this visualization exercise that I want you to do. The part one and part two of these visualization exercises, a little bit of a tongue twister, really came about from solution focused therapy. And solution focused therapy is a way of looking at successes or times when we've been successes or our potential to be successful and really kind of building off of that. Okay. So the first visualization exercise I want you to do is I want you to sit down and really think about times when you may have been successful in the past on developing and sticking with a weight loss plan. I consider success a period of time where you were losing weight. If you eventually gained it all back, that's fine. But I want you to at least look at the time when you were losing weight, that time. Not after that time when you gained it all back, just the time when you were successful on the plan, you were doing well, you were losing weight. What was your mindset then? What were you thinking then? What were your feelings then? What was going on internally with you? And how do you think you were able to be successful? A lot of times we can find a lot of good advice or direction from the ways that we used to do something that turned out successful for us. Now, of course, you may also look at those times and say that ultimately ended up not being successful, the journey, because I gained all the weight back. Okay, but are there some tidbits? Are there some morsels of something that you did during that time or a mindset you had that was working that you can build off of to get really excited and psyched up to do it again? Okay. Now, if you've never successfully been able to lose any kind of significant amount of weight, then I want you to just forget that and say, I'm starting anew. This is going to be a new lifestyle for me, and I'm going to be successful, even though I've never been successful at this before. I've never lost any kind of significant weight before. I'm going to be successful because All I have to do is follow a plan that puts me in a deficit, and I will lose weight because this is science. Now, for those of you, whether or not you've been successful in the past or never successful, the second visualization exercise is going to become very helpful. So the second visualization exercise is to almost kind of imagine, not almost, to imagine a time when you are going to be successful. What does that look like? Project yourself into the future and imagine, both with a short-term focus and a long-term focus. The long-term focus, what are you feeling? What is your life like now that you've lost all the weight? What is going on with you in terms of your energy levels, in terms of your perspective, in terms of your beliefs and thoughts about yourself? How good does that feel? How good does it feel to look in the mirror, to hear people say, wow, you're looking great? How good does it feel to have more energy to spend with time with your kids, doing more active kinds of things? What does that look like? What does your future look like? I want you to literally imagine that you've accomplished your ultimate goal, lost all the weight, you're looking and feeling great, your confidence is soaring, and you're actually even thinking of doing other kinds of endeavors and projects because your confidence is just off the charts. I want you to really feel that. I want you to really think about that. This is another exercise we do in solution focused therapy, really trying to imagine. A lot of times we say, you know, if I had a crystal ball and I could look 2 years into the future, and you did your weight loss plan, followed it to the T, you lost all the weight, you know, what are you doing differently? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What's going on with your life? What does your life look like? And that's a really important visualization exercise. You know, there's a saying, we don't go where our mind hasn't gone first. And so that's really what this is based off of. I want you to visualize it. And this is not some fluffy exercise. This really is powerful, because if you can't visualize what it's like to be that person, that's at a different level of, you know, low confidence, right? There's low confidence, and then there's, I can't even imagine being successful at this. That's like another whole level of low confidence. You have to be able to visualize yourself being successful with this plan and getting to your ultimate goal. And then the other thing that I want you to look at is the short term. What am I doing 2 weeks from now when I've been on this plan? What am I feeling? What's going on with me? Imagine yourself stepping onto the scale and losing weight, or measuring your belly and seeing the inches go down. You know, feeling good about yourself, feeling like you can do this, feeling positive, feeling like this isn't as hard as you thought it would be, feeling like this is something you can really stick with. And then maybe even having a couple stressful days and still sticking with your plan. And at the end of the day saying, holy cow, I didn't throw in the towel. That's amazing. I stuck with it. These visualization exercises are really, really important. Another thing to consider to motivate yourself, and I've spoken about this ad nauseum, so I'm just gonna briefly say this: create a food and exercise plan that you can stick with and maybe even look forward to. You could look forward to your food plan if you spend some time creating meals that are really delicious. And you certainly can look forward to your exercise plan if it's exercises that you really enjoy doing. Imagine having that kind of plan that you can stick with and feel good about, and it doesn't feel like it's so difficult. Okay. So while, you know, I basically said there's, you know, the motivation before you do the plan, and then there's some tips to keep you going once you're, you know, actually on the plan. When you're on the plan, every day you stick with it, I want you to tell yourself that I am successful. I did it. And even if at the end of the week, you are not so happy with your results, if you stuck with the plan that you developed, you have to be happy with yourself, because at the very least, for that week, you weren't a prisoner to food. You have made a lot of inroads into really combating this food addiction. And just from that standpoint, a mental health standpoint, you were successful. There are many reasons why you might not see a drop in weight from one week to the next. But if you are in a deficit, you are eventually going to see it. I've talked about the whoosh effect. Sometimes we have to wait for that. But in the meantime, just know that you're sticking with your plan. And if it's like several weeks or a month later and you're still not making really good progress with your actual weight loss, then it's time to look at the plan and make a few tweaks so that you can make sure you're in a deficit. You know, sometimes it's like we're like here and people are like, oh, geez, I must not be in a deficit. So now I got to do something drastic, right? No, all you have to do is just dip into that deficit a little bit, and voila, it's the difference between progress and no progress with your weight. Don't overreact. Sometimes it's just a few tweaks. I don't want you to get alarmed and think like, oh my gosh, I knew it. This is too easy to follow. I know it. Now I got to develop a really uncomfortable plan. I got to sacrifice. You do not. You just need to make a few adjustments. Okay. Now, on that note, we want to make sure we have enough measurements or assessments to capture any weight loss, or more importantly, fat loss that has happened with us. Because this is what really is going to keep you going. If you are seeing progress, if you're seeing progress, that is going to keep you on this plan. That's going to keep you going. So we don't want a week to go by where you miss capturing that progress. And so I talked about this in my video on measurements. You want to do not just a body weight measurement with the scale, but you want to take several measurements in places or on places of your body with the tape measure that fat tends to store. Problem areas, as we call them. For me and many men, it's the midsection. For women, it could be the hips or the thighs or the midsection as well. Take a few different measurements so that you make sure, if the weight scale doesn't show any fat loss, that you're picking up fat loss in other measurements. It's super, super important. It could be the case that your weight stays the same if you're doing resistance training or other kinds of strength training, and you're building muscle and losing fat. That's actually amazing. And then you'd see your weight stay pretty much the same, but clearly you're losing fat because you've built muscle and your weight stayed the same. Muscle weighs more than fat. Okay, the other thing you can do is take pictures. Sometimes the fat loss occurred in a body part or an area of your body you just didn't assess. It happens. In fact, it's not stagnant that every week you lose fat in the same areas. Some weeks you'll lose more fat in your face or your neck. Some weeks you'll lose more in your butt or your thighs or your abdomen. It's not, a stagnant kind of process where it always just takes from the problem areas. We lose body fat in many areas of our body. And once those areas of our body, there's not much more fat to lose. And of course, at that point, we really start losing body fat in those problem areas at a much more rapid pace. So just keep that in mind. But as long as you are losing fat wherever, you are doing well and you're going to get there. So sometimes you may not have captured the fat loss. And I always like to take pictures. There are weeks where it's not being reflected on the scale. It's not being reflected in the tape measurements that I made, but I look differently. I could tell I look thinner. So take pictures. Take pictures. That could help too on some weeks where you just failed to measure that part of the body that actually lost body fat. All right, I hope that these different tips really serve you to try to get motivated, more importantly, to get going and create a plan, but then certainly to stick with the plan. This is Dr. Fields. I am going to be putting out part 4, which is going to talk about the food dependency issue and how to combat that. I'm going to do that most likely tomorrow, if not the next day. And once again, I apologize for the delay. I'm back. I'm feeling 95% healthy, and so there should be no more delays. Oh, and I just want to also say, if you guys have any questions about what I'm posting or, any of the things I'm teaching in the videos, please post it in the group if you're in my Facebook group, or post on my webpage. Okay, this is Dr. Fields, and I will talk to you soon.